it.
And we're not going to stop it. Of course we're not going to stop it. Ash Hanley finishes it off.
Jack Bird with his first Leeds try.
Welcome along to Matchday Live, everybody. A pleasure to have your company as round 19 of the Betfred Super League comes to a close, and no better way to bring this round to a close than having an all Yorkshire clash. LEEDS RHINOS heading over to the OneBore Stadium to take on Castleford Tigers. It's always a pretty close clash. It's always a very close rivalry when the Rhinos head down there. We know the fans get behind both the Rhinos and the Tigers, so it should be a really exciting one for you guys going. We're hoping to get the excitement and build that excitement nice and early. I'm Dan Hawkhead, your host as always, joined by BBC Radio Leeds' Jack Conlon. And Jack, before we get too much into this week, let's take us all back a little week and say Catalan's Dragons finally managed to get the monkey off our back, finally managed to score some points in Perpignan. Just how do you think the game went? How do you think the Rhinos really looked on, against what was a disappointing Catalan outfit at times?
Yeah, the hoodoo is banished. I mean, I know we were speaking about it last week, weren't we? But I'd completely forgotten actually just how much of a curse that they'd had over there, and how long it had been since they got a win or even scored a point. Was it 3 seasons, 3 games on the bounce? Was it? That's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, really good of them to finally to get that off the back, as you say, and a pretty comprehensive win. Not one of the finest this season, probably one of those that, dependent on how the season ends for the Rhinos, not one that you'd look back and say was particularly pretty or a memorable one, but regardless, one that they needed to get out of the way and get done, and they absolutely did. Brody Croft grabs the headlines with his hat-trick, really well taken as well, I thought. Different sorts of tries, one that he showed a fair bit of toe off that loose ball that he picked up, and goes all the way in the corner, nice little goose step in the middle of that. And his other ones very much sort of very Brody Croft tries, supporting and being in the right place. That little wicked step that he's got. He was without a doubt the best player on the field. I think the man of the match for the Rhinos. So it was a win that they needed to just get over the line, and crucially they did that. And they are 4 points at the top of the table.
I think it comes as well after we said on the last show leading up to Catalan that then have really got out of the third gear really against Bradford. They didn't have to do the same against Catalans. Now, again, I hark on that. I think it's been a disappointing year for Catalan overall. They disappointed me again a little bit. I thought they'd throw a little bit more at us over in Perpignan. But touching on you've just had Brody Croft with 20 tries. It's a career year, and it's a real shame we're losing him next year because he's having a career year.
He absolutely is, and he's going to be such a tough player to sort of replace. George Brown, by all accounts, is going to step into that role. So, that's a challenge for him, isn't it, to sort of try and replicate, or not so much replicate, I guess, but, try and fill the shoes of someone who is so crucial to this team. But, it is just the way that rugby league works, isn't it, sometimes, and that players move on. We went through this, I think, when that announcement was made a couple of months back that he was leaving and he's joining Warrington next season. The reasons that were underlined, that for him and his family, not having to make that commute over from Lancashire every day will be beneficial. It's completely understandable, is that, I think. So, yeah, he's going to be a big miss next season for Leeds. As I say, it'll be interesting to see how they go without him and sort of the way they plug the gap that he leaves, but also the gap that's left by those other players that are leaving too. But, if you're going to have a career year, then best to do it on the season you're bowing out.
Absolutely, but 7 wins regardless on the bounce. It's not been done by the Rhinos since 2016. I think as well, you're looking at the teams that have won League Leader Shields, gone on to win grand finals in the recent years. Look at Hull KR, look at Wigan Warriors. They've put these kinds of runs together at this point of the year. I'm not tempting fate by saying it, but we're putting ourselves in a real strong spot to be in that contention and put ourselves, the bookies' odds for at least a grand final appearance. It's trending in that way, isn't it? Not to get too far ahead of ourselves.
I think it is, though. I don't think it's unfair to say at all that they are going in the right direction, and we've referred to it already in recent weeks that you look at some of the wins that have been part of that run. Hawkhead, Warrington, St Helens, teams that are probably faltering a little bit at the minute, but equally are still in that top 6 picture and could potentially be a side that Leeds end up facing in the playoffs. So to get that psychological boost over them, I've said it many times this season, Wigan are still the challenge for me. Wigan are still the challenge. I think they're growing, and again they're building into the playoffs. That win that they had over Warrington last week was monumental, given the context, given the injuries they've got, given how many youngsters are out there. But they played very much like a Wigan team in the end, and they've got that Wigan DNA in them still. So yeah, for me, they are still the big challenge for this Leeds side, and in my eyes, as it stands, are the only side that could derail the Rhinos from going on to win. I think the League Leaders' Shield, I think they're well on track for, but the grand final a bit further down the line. So yeah, they've got a relatively nice run as well, I think, now of Leeds. Relatively nice running. Yeah. That's no disrespect to the teams they're playing, but I think when you look on paper at who those top 6 or 7 sides have all got to play, Leeds are have got one of those preferable runs where there's a lot of teams that are a bit further down the table. But I think the way they're going, to be honest, you could put anyone in front of them just about in Super League and you'd back them to win. So, whether or not that'll make much difference, we'll have to see. But yeah, I think, like I said, they are absolutely trending in the right direction. You hope they've not peaked too soon. I don't think they have. I think they're still building, and I think there is still more to come from this side. I think crucially as well, they've shown that they can perform in big games as well. You look at the games they've had to get up for against Hawkhead, against Warrington, against Saints. They absolutely have done. They've raised that game. So yeah, I think they're moving in the right direction without a doubt.
They've met those challenges, haven't they? But it's important, having beaten those big sides, that we don't let any banana skins go in. Now, Brad Arthur has said in his press conference this week, and we touched on it pre-show, Jack, that today's game can't be a banana skin for the Rhinos, but Castleford are a highly motivated side. They're a side that's trending in the right direction after a great performance, at least against Leeds. Didn't quite get the result, but Cass can 100% be that banana skin, can't they, today?
I think they can, yeah. And like you say there, Brad Arthur himself addressed it in his pre-match that they can't take them lightly, which I think is absolutely the right approach to take. And that's just what we've come to know of Brad Arthur anyway. There's no opposition that he's going to underestimate, but yeah, I think it does pose a risk, certainly, of being one of those sort of banana skin games, to coin that old phrase, simply for the fact that it's away at Cass, which at times in recent history has been a difficult place for Leeds to go. Not all the time, the record's not bad there at all, but we've seen games where the Rhinos have been frustrated by the Tigers, and those are the games that have tended to go against Leeds. Castleford as well, you look at the context of where they're at this season, they've got nothing to lose really now. They're not going to make the 6. There's some players there that may well be playing for contracts, albeit from, if you read into what Ryan Carr has said in recent weeks about some of his team, I think there's decisions already made on just about every player in that squad as to what part they will or won't play next season. So, yeah, you look at that league game. I was at that league game. I was working for BBC Radio Leeds, and it was the most frustrating game from a Castleford Tigers point of view. It was such a stop-start afternoon. I think the second half took around 60 minutes. It was almost an entire hour, that second half. There were some really, really tough calls that went against them. Jason Gary had 2 tries ruled out. Ryan Carr was seething afterwards. He did quite well, I think, to keep his emotions just about under control, but you could tell there was a real annoyance about in his demeanour about some of those decisions that had gone against them. So they're probably a side that come into this game quite angry, and we'll be looking to take that anger out on Leeds and try and replicate last week's performance in this game, but go one better. So I think they are a relatively dangerous side, actually. you could look back at the Magic Weekend game against Wakefield where they were absolutely obliterated. Wakey was so much better. They were poles apart, and that is one of Castleford's worst performances of the season. But they are a side that can, on their day, pull something out. They beat Toulouse convincingly a few weeks back. They beat St Helens as well this season. They beat Wigan, albeit when Wigan weren't at their best. They beat
Huge
Wigan,
win.
which in itself is a statement. So I do think it's got a potential to be one of those banana skin games, but I do think this Leeds side are just so professional and just go about their business in such a way that they won't allow it to be. They go into the game as favourites without a doubt, and I think that will probably be enough. I do think that they will just have too much for Cass again.
What better way to set up the derby game, or at least the Yorkshire rivalry game? I think you've summed the whole game up pretty well there for getting people excited for this one. If you head into the OneBore Stadium, we hope you're having a great day out in the sunshine on the railway end of the stadium. Just touching on Cass with Ryan Carr, I think it's been a frustrating year for him. I know that it was a building project for him coming in. It was never sort of set in stone exactly what that side would look like this year. Do you think it's been more of a work in progress than he maybe thought it would be?
It's a hard question to answer that. I mean, Ryan Carr himself is the only person who'd have the proper answer, I guess. But
Sure.
Possibly not, because I think whenever a new coach comes in like he has, I think it naturally will always take a couple of seasons to properly, get the side moving in the direction you want it to. I know, funnily enough, Brad Arthur this week as well was asked about, when he first came in. I mean, funnily enough, this game falls on the 2-year anniversary of him being in charge of the Rhinos, and I think it's the 2-year anniversary either, I think, of his first game or when he first was announced as head coach. I have to double check which one, but regardless, he was talking about when he first got over to England. I remember the game well. It was away at Warrington.
Yes.
Wasn't the first one who was in charge. That was Chev Walker's last in charge. But Brad Arthur was there in more of a watching brief, having had, I think he said, just an hour's sleep, having made the flight over. He watched the first half and thought, what have I got myself in for here? And then watched the second half and saw some fight in there. And, that I think was probably the first building block in his mind as to what he wanted this team to then become. And I think, you look now, 2 years on, they are now in a position, you'd probably say, where when Brad Arthur first arrived in England, he wanted them to be, or certainly pushing to where he wanted them to be. Now they've not won anything yet under him, which is the key part, and often teams and coaches are judged on trophies and that sort of success, but certainly if you look at the progress made over those 2 years, they've come so far of this team. Individuals as well who've just developed so much in themselves. Jake Connor, you can put in there, probably some of the players that were already here. Mikolaj Ledsky, Jared O'Connor, Tom Holroyd, James McDonnell. So many players that have improved under Brad Arthur, and he's moulded them into a squad very much in his own image now. And they are playing Brad Arthur rugby in the style that Brad Arthur would like them to play, and it's obviously working given where they are in the table at the minute. So coming back to Castleford and that same point, I think you've always, with a new coach, there's got to be a degree of long-termism and patience and just waiting for things to start to click, because it doesn't all just happen overnight.
No.
Or in half a season like Ryan Carr finds himself in now. They've shown bright shoots here and there. There are clearly players that he will want to keep and want to be an integral part of that side, but equally they are now, by the look of things, coming into another relatively heavy recruitment cycle. I mean, I think they've announced 2 or 3 players already. Couple of big ones for next season, Damien Cook and Matt Feeney. Alfie Johnson from Halifax as well, I think he's about to be announced. I think Halifax have already announced him this week as a Cass player. He's more of a depth signing, but regardless, there's movements there already being made, especially when you look at some of the other rumours as well. Rob Mulhern, by all accounts, he's signing for Castleford. There's a couple of others in there as well. Ben McNamara is another one.
Tyrell Sloan.
Who,
obviously Carr knows very well from his time at the Dragons.
Exactly. So there's a group of players there that you look at and think, actually, those are some decent signings. Now, this has happened before with Castleford.
Yes.
They've had a big turnover of players, and people have thought maybe this is the year where they actually push on, and it's not gone that way. I think you can pick out a few of their their new signings from this season that haven't quite worked out how they would have liked. Michaela Ravalawa is probably a big example. Darnell McIntosh has struggled at times. Semi Valame has been good, but hasn't been on the pitch enough. You know, he's spent plenty of time out injured. Tom Weaver's probably not hit the heights that they hoped. So there's a group there that maybe just haven't quite reached those heights. And again, Castleford find themselves not necessarily at square one, but back in a position where they're about to have probably another big turnover of players, hoping that this crop will be the ones that push them on. So, yeah, they are in a difficult spot, again, at Castleford, but I don't think for a second that Ryan Carr thought this first year would be easy or easier than he's maybe finding it now. You know, there's been frustrations around certain games and decisions that haven't perhaps gone their way, but I think longer term, I do still think there is a vision there, and I do think Ryan Carr is probably a good person to deliver that, and I think the fans have definitely got on his side as well, particularly on the back of that league game, the response he was demanding and the response he got from the players. And
that's the important point, isn't it? If once the fans are behind the project or behind what's happening, that is always helpful. I think they've managed to get those big wins as well with, like you've said, against Wigan, against St Helens, that always look great at the end of the season, and you could sort of hang your hat on. If we do well in those games, then you're then building again to develop. Interesting stat as well, because we know we'll have a stat on Matchday Live. Castleford have never lost, when they've had 3 losses in a row, have never lost the next game. They've always won the next game, which bodes quite fortuitous for Rhinos fans for today. But it shows that he's getting in there and doing the jobs. Yes, it's still that work in progress, but against the Rhinos there's always something different, isn't there? We know from these games in previous years against... It's almost the new derby when Bradford's not been in the league, isn't it? Castle are always exciting when they come down. It's always a tighter game, at least when they play Leeds.
Without a doubt, they're almost like the little brother from down the road, aren't they? Castleford a little bit in that sense. But yeah, I think in the last 10 years or so, that derby has really grown. I mean, you look at, I think 2017 as a season was big for that. You know, when Castleford were unbelievable and the Darryl Powell did everything apart from win the grand final, which obviously went Leeds' way in the end. So, yeah, I think it's a derby that's certainly grown down the years. Castleford having that period of success and almost being the side on top for those couple of years, I think just really ignited it a bit more. And all of a sudden, you know, they had a bit of, you know, a bit more confidence, a bit more cockiness, I guess, to sort of say, you know, we're playing with the big guys now. And it's not continued in that way, obviously, given where Castleford are now and where Leeds are now. But you know, it certainly stoked up that fire, didn't it, and built that rivalry into what it is today. And you know, the stat that you mentioned there just shows what a resilient Castleford side, you know, this is, particularly at the moment. And A, yes, how they can bounce back after defeats, but B, their big problem, I think, has also been that inconsistency. Like I say, there's been so many promising performances from them this season. The Toulouse game, the St Helens game, the Wigan game. They've just not been able to back it up. And interestingly, speaking to Ryan Carr last week ahead of the league game, you know, sort of pointed out, you know, is the difference between a good and a great team that consistency, and a great team being the ones that can produce those moments of quality but do it again and again and again and again. He was like, yeah, absolutely. You know, that is absolutely the difference. And I think that is the difference between Leeds and Castleford at the minute, in that Leeds are delivering week in, week out, even when Leeds aren't at their best, and produce what they would consider under par performances by their own standards. They're still getting the job done and getting over the line. And I think you take some examples of that: the Toulouse win, the Bradford win at Magic Weekend, probably to a degree the Catalans win last week as well. You know, those are all games in which they've probably not performed at their optimum level, but have still got over the line in pretty comfortable fashion.
No one's been worried, have they? Looking at those results, no one at any point sort of went, oh, there were sort of, like we talked about last week, there's been 20-minute spells in the game where you went, oh, that's a little bit odd, but we've never been quite worried, have we?
No, exactly. And like I said, I think that is the difference, in that Leeds are doing it week in, week out. Castleford, on the other hand, are going from up here to down here relatively regularly. The Wakefield game, again, being a perfect example of they were so poor at Magic Weekend. Yet against Lee, they completely raised the game. Don't quite do it. Again, I think are unfortunate in a few of the calls that went against them. but they're just so erratic when it comes to level of performance that you honestly don't know which Castleford side you're going to get week in, week out. And that's probably one of the frustrations for Ryan Carr, is that he knows the potential is there. It's just, what side is he going to get when match day comes around? So, yeah, it'll be. I do think it's teed up to be an entertaining afternoon at the Jungle, or the OneBore Stadium as it is now called. But
Forever the Jungle.
Forever the Jungle. It is. It'll always be the Jungle, I think. But honestly, you don't know what Castleford side are going to turn up. So Leeds could either win at a canter or have a really frustrating afternoon.
There we go, you heard it there. This is the kind of game that we are looking forward to. Will it be a convincing Rhinos win? Will the Tigers push us all the way? Speaking about, arcing back around to talking about squad and incomings that are due to come in for next year. There's been plenty of incomings this year. They've had 9 players, whether it's been permanently or on loan from other clubs, throughout the course of the year. For a second year, really, they did the same exact thing last year, bringing in quite a lot of players. 2 of those have definitely lifted, I would say, the standard within the camp. Phoenix Lalu Tonga guy and Tyler Dupree, both exciting players in their own right. Tyler obviously came through here at Leeds. Has looked really great in the pack in sort of filling that Brad Singleton role, because I know obviously he departed. Lalu Tonga guy, though, a real live wire, and seems to have really found a home here.
He's an interesting one, is Lalu Tonga guy, because he's sort of been on the scene for a fair old while.
He seems like he has.
It absolutely does. I remember him playing alongside his dad for Keighley years ago. I think he was only a teenager then, 17, 18 years old. I sort of gradually made that step up. Spent a good chunk of time with Hull KR, obviously. Don't think he played a handful of games for Hull KR, I think, didn't he? But not many at all. And spent 2 seasons on loan at Oldham, again cutting his teeth in the Championship. Looked promising for Catalans at the start of this season, and then at Castleford, when they sort of swooped him and brought him back to West Yorkshire. I think the guarantee was almost there for him, certainly this season, that they're doing so, guaranteeing him that fullback spot. Yes. And that is where he's really excelled. Obviously Blake Taft didn't really get a fair run at it this season.
Not his fault.
Well, a couple of games, and then does his ACL. It's such an unfortunate thing to happen to him. And I think that sort of did put Castleford in a bit of a state of disarray, because you could just tell they were just trying to fill that gap for so long. Without a natural fullback or a first choice fullback there. Zach Senior played a fair bit, but he is a centre by trade. So never really sort of did the same thing. And finally they managed to bring in Lalu Tonga guy, and he's been a bit of a mini revelation. He's not without his errors here or there. His first game against Hull KR was error strewn. I think in fairness he'd only had 1 or 2 training sessions, and it was almost a nightmare start to his Castleford career. But since then he's really come on leaps and bounds, and I think you can tell the difference in that Castleford side when they do have an out-and-out fullback there. That does offer something in attack, certainly, that offers that point of difference, gives Weaver and Arcee an option and a threat as well. Someone out the back that can take on defenders, try and create those overlaps on the edge, release your likes of Mapapalangi and Gary, or Valame and McIntosh Senior, whoever's on the other side as well. So I think he's been really, really promising for them. What really plays next season, I think, again, is another big question with Tyrell Sloan. By all accounts coming in, does that shove him down the pecking order? Probably. Yeah. But his performances this season certainly warrant, a place in their 17. So I think he'll be a real selection dilemma for Ryan Carr next year. But yeah, he's been really good since coming in. Tyler Dupree being the other one, who is a player that's almost, I guess, not so much gone off the radar in the past couple of years, but I think his performances in the past couple of seasons have just been a far cry from what we saw when he was at his best in 2023, when he was at Salford, ended up going to Wigan that season, got an England call up too, made 3 appearances for England. That was Tyler Dupree at his peak, or certainly the peak we've seen so far from him. Since then, he's just not quite replicated that for whatever reason, but I think coming to Castleford, where he does have that extra responsibility on his shoulders, back in West Yorkshire, back in his home county, he is now a senior leader in that pack and has to be. He's missed the past. He missed the league game due to head injury protocols. He's expected to be back this week. There's a couple of players I think who are still out with sort of extended stand-downs because it's their second head knock, George Hurst and Brock Greason, so they're still out.
Yes.
So there is pressure on that Castleford pack at the moment, but having a Dupree back who, since he's joined Castleford, certainly in their better games, has shown glimpses of that 2023 player. It's just, again, replicating that on a week-to-week basis and doing it all the time. But the signs are certainly there that he can get back to that form under Ryan Cowan at Castleford Tigers, but he's an integral part of that forward pack. There's no doubts about that.
It's the short passes, isn't it? I was looking at when you look at the film and you just see a few clips now. It's those taking it to the line, and Dupree always hangs on the shoulder. As soon as he then hits that gap or hits a defender in his way, most of the time he'll brush him aside, and then there's a bit of sneaky speed in there, isn't there? That once he gets away, there was a remarkable try he scored for Oldham, I believe, that was it broke the line and ran nearly half the field. He's done it on a few occasions, hasn't he? For Cass this season, he's one of those players that, especially when you look at where their pack's at, it's not quite up to standard. Actually, he does raise that a little bit more in what he can bring.
He's a big, powerful body with leg speed.
Summed up quite well there.
Crucially, and yeah, Cass have just missed that, almost that battering ram. Really, that player that's got the size,
that Junior Moore style.
Yeah, exactly that. Someone who will just literally take it at full tilt at that defensive line, with no care in the world for the outcome. And I think Tyler Dupree fits that mould for them. Hence why, again, he can make a break. He can skittle players without a doubt, and really get Cass on the front foot, and that's what he's done. That's been part of his game that I think has been really impressive since he's come back since he joined the Tigers this season. Is just the fact that he can get them on the front foot. He's very much that sort of player, and there's not loads of that in their pack. I think actually now with some of the players they brought in, Jack Brown is another one that's in there. Sam Hall was really good against Lee. We'll mention him in a moment, but there's players there that can really get them on the front foot, and they've got a nice mix now. And again, I think that's part of that building process for Castleford, that once all the pieces are sort of in that jigsaw, on paper certainly there will be a good team there. Again, different game when it's actually on match day and when you've got that 80 minutes. But I think there are all the signs there that they could be a good team. I think Dupree, again, just for the reason we've mentioned, is an integral part of that going forward. Just
looping back to Lila Tonga guy, 7 try assists this year. It's not just been the try scoring for him. I think that's been really played.
In half a season as well, let's not forget. That's for him. So
it's a really good effort, isn't it? Yeah. From someone that's his age as well, that's really honing his craft, like we've said. He's really going there. Just moving it on to our other key players, ironically also in the forward pack. George Lawler is one of those almost experienced heads now. You've lost your Singletons. It needed somebody to sort of take games by the scruff of the neck, and he's certainly done that. And 4 tries as well, alongside being the club's top tackler. It was one of those, we're coming back to it again for, I think, a 3rd week running. He's one of them that does it in defence, and he also does it in attack for his side. He's crucial, isn't he?
He's such a consistent player. He is Mr. Consistent for Castleford. Yes. He's almost always in the picture somewhere. He does long minutes as well, which again, you need those sorts of players in your team. Those toilers in the middle who can just get through so much work in attack and defence and just keep going, have that tank to just never stop and stay at a level, and that's exactly what he does. Again, another one of those that, I know we mentioned it for Dupree for different reasons, but is such a vital part of that Castleford side. I think when you're looking further forward, he's probably one, or almost certainly one, that Ryan Cowell wants to keep around in 2027 and beyond, just for his work rate and what he gets through. He can play in the middle, he can play on the edge. As a forward as well, he's got that versatility about him. He can fill in at hooker when needed. He's such a vital player, and he plays to a good standard wherever he is put. He's played a lot through the middle for them this season, either as a prop or as a loose forward. As a middle forward, essentially, is what his main role has been. And again, I think he complements your Duprees, your Renner Tonys, your Jack Browns, your Joe Stimsons, those that are probably the bigger hitters. He's the perfect player to have there, that off the back of those those runs from those bigger bodies that do perhaps get your side on the front foot. He can take the next drive and make those extra meters and just keep that momentum moving during an attacking set. So yeah, he's a fantastic player.
And someone that absolutely, our next man, Sam Hall, can really lean on. Lawler brings 250, well over 200 appearances in Super League for his career. Sam Hall, I was surprised just how many appearances he's made for Castleford. Debuted back in 2020. He's got 68 games under his belt. He's having a fantastic season. And you picked him out because he had a fantastic game against Lee last time out with a try-scoring performance.
He was really good. He's one of Castleford's best players against Lee last week. Like you say there, you forget how long Sam Hall's really been around. I think he's sort of approaching mid-20s now. He made his debut as a teenager. Has never really, that's the only frustrating thing is he's never really properly broken in and been a consistent part of a 17. He was knocked back a bit, I think, at the start of this season in squad number. He's squad number 25, having been higher up, I guess, in the pecking order and in the squad number order in the past. And he has spent a lot of time this season out of that first team side. Now, Castleford's injuries, particularly on the back of the Magic weekend, going into the league game, meant that change had to happen and meant that some of those forwards had to step up. We saw Jack Ashworth play as well for Castleford last week. But Sam Hall, for the first time in a while, Sam Hall, you can probably say similarly. He's been on the periphery for a fair few weeks, and Ryan Carr said after the league game that he'd had to have a tough conversation with Sam Hall of late and say, you're not going to be part of this 17. For certainly if this squad stays fit now, injury obviously presents an opportunity, and he played last week like a man that wanted to prove a point and that wanted to prove that he should be a part of that team week in, week out. I think it might have been his exact first run, but one of his first runs, he comes onto the ball at pace, goes straight in behind the ruck and makes a break halfway up the field and gets cast again on the front foot. And at the end of that set, he scores the try. It was the perfect first set for a player coming off the bench. And honestly, it's nothing. I'd never seen that from Sam Hall before. Again, he's always struck me as a bit of a George Lawler type in that he, just works and works and works. Will just take run after run after run, get through defence, but there was an explosive nature about him with those runs and the pace at which he was coming onto them as well. He ended up, bless him, going off for a HI as well. He came back on, so he passed it, but he was very much in that league game willing to just put his body on the line for his teammates and throw everything into it. And like I say, he played like a man who wanted to prove a point to Ryan Carr, his coach, and I think he went a good way about doing that. And I would be surprised if he's not in their 17 this weekend, in part because there's still forwards that are injured, but also on his own merit because he was great against Lee. I
just think as well, when you're in those tough battles and you want, especially when, the scoreline didn't quite sit Cass's way, but it's always going to infuse and invigorate players to really want to go out there. And Sam Hall is a great example. We did want to touch on Christian Mapapalangi coming into this one, but we're obviously unsure about his status coming into this one. Didn't play against Lee, went off during the warm-up. Is a massive miss because he was he was my first pick for players to talk about this week. He's been an awesome signing for them, and glad that for Cass fans that he's sticking around. But whether we see him today, we're not sure.
He's been brilliant. He's been absolutely brilliant. One of the signings of the season, across Super League for me, not just Cass. He just adds something so different down that left edge. He has this sort of deceptive strength, a good turn of pace as well. It's combining really well with Jason Gary. And he was, I think, a big miss for Castleford at Lee last week. Ravalauer comes in and they have to shuffle the deck a little bit. Valame goes to left centre, Ravalauer on the wing, and they both showed up okay, but it's not the same as having Mapapalangi there. He literally jogged down the tunnel with about 15 minutes until kick-off, and we'd spotted it actually, because the tunnel at Lee is right below the press box, and you could see him going off, and the eyebrows started to be raised straight away as to, is that a problem? Is he just going to the toilet? Who knows? But no, as it turned out, he was out of the game, and it was a big blow for Castleford. Ryan Carr, after the game, said he will probably be okay for this week. It'll be touch and go. He didn't want to put him out there if he wasn't 100% ready to go at it. I think he had a leg knock at Magic Weekend, and that, I think, seemingly reared its head again in the warm-up against Lee. So he may well be involved today. If he is, then obviously it's a threat for Leeds. But if he's not, then that is a big boost because he's, without a doubt, one of, if not Castleford's best player. And another challenge for Ash Hanley, bear in mind that we touched on the amount of great centres that he's come up against this year, setting the standard.
Interestingly, bring up Jason Gary. We move on to our head-to-head this week, which is on the wing, and it's definitely been a year for the wingers. Jason Gary going up against Micah Sevo. Jack, we'll start with Jason because 2025 wasn't his year. He spent all of it on the sideline. There's a way to bounce back. This year, he's done just that. Outside of Mapapalangi, has seemed to strike a real good combination with Lalo Tongagai as well, and he's got 15 tries off the back of it. It's been a remarkable year for such a great talent that's come through Cass's system, isn't it?
It has, without a doubt, and I think, again, you look back to the start of the season, similar to what we mentioned about Sam Hall, he was a player that probably, on paper at the start of the year, wasn't part of Castleford's first-choice side. Number 22 on his back. They brought in Semi Valamé and Michele Ravalawa, who I think initially were probably their first-choice wingers.
I think
as the season's panned out, and in part due to injuries, he's ended up owning that left flank and has been so good. Probably the best version of Jason Gary we've seen now. He's been hampered, hasn't he, in recent years by injuries. I think that's just in part because he is such an explosive player. You know, he's got that lightning speed, you know, down that left edge, and I think we saw that from when he made his debut as a 17-year-old, you know, a few years back now, which is still a game and a try that lives long in the memory. Him just going round the outside and you know, down that left wing for Castleford, and he's finally, you know, it's almost just clicked for him at the right time this season because, again, by all accounts, he was on his way out. He was supposedly going to be a York player next year until this form just started to hit, and Cass were desperate to keep him, and, you know, by whatever negotiations they managed to do so. So I think that just works in Castleford's favour, obviously, because a player like that who is as red hot as he has been in 2026, what could have possibly been his final opportunity at Castleford, again, as I say, was a player that they were probably happy to let go of, you know, seemingly by all accounts. So yeah, it's just clicked at the right time. 15 tries on that left edge is fantastic. I mean, Mapapalangi inside him as well. They are some combination for the Tigers on that left edge. They really are. So yeah, they've struck up that good dynamic, and you know, Gary is obviously the beneficiary of having a fantastic centre inside him in Mapapalangi, but you know, some of those tries that he does score are fantastic efforts as well that he wouldn't be able to get if he didn't have the pace, the agility, you know, that he does have. You know, the amount of times
Nous at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. He's a brilliant finisher. The amount of times you see him just get on the outside of his opposite winger and just blitz it to the corner. He just backs his pace, backs his ability, and yeah, he's a real strike weapon for the Tigers on that left wing.
I think it went under the radar that he'd scored in 7 consecutive games. He was following Micah Sevo, who was just ahead of him with 9 games. He'd scored 10 tries in 7 games up until I think it
was the league game, and he gets too disallowed as well.
Oh,
so I mean,
it's too cruel.
It's annoying for Castleford that, but it's annoying for Jason Gary that he can't keep that record up because yeah, you're absolutely right. It was before that 7 games in a row, which is remarkable.
Unbelievable.
You know, again, as you say, a player that's gone under the radar probably because of Micah Sevo's try-scoring exploits.
And I think as well, just before we get on to Micah, last point on Cass, I think it's in his senior, is the only Castleford player to be double digits in the last sort of 3 years. To have Gary get to that level, that's what you need to be looking for. If you've only got your top scorers scoring in single digits, it doesn't quite bode well. Micah, we've raved about all season. Scored 3 tries here at AMT Headingley against Castleford after coming back from Vegas, having scored 4 tries. Just solidified just what season we expected from him. Annoyingly, his run came to an end. He could have set the Super League record out in Perpignan, but it's not like I think the players did try. There were a few chances late in it, but nevertheless, a steering for potential player of the year. He's had a remarkable campaign, hasn't he, Jack? Oh,
it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I think the signs were there early on, weren't they, with his debut here, then the game in Vegas, like you say, where he just showed what, again, a natural try scorer he is. When you get him 10 metres out from the opposition try line, there's very little stopping him even now. You know, teams know what he's going to do, but still, if he's got that space, it's inevitable that he's just going to score. What is it? Is it 28 tries he's on now in Super League?
He's up to 28 and then 30 in total.
30 in all. Yeah, so he's chasing. I mean, on the subject of records, he's still chasing down Dennis Solomona's record.
Castleford player Dennis Solomona,
yes.
For those that haven't been tracking the story.
Of 40. He got 40 in one season, albeit I think with the benefit of having a couple of extra games that year, just because of how the season was. So I think he's still well on track to do it. 12 tries in 9 games.
9 games to go.
I think that's for most players you'd say that's probably not a chance, but for Micah Sevo, that is more than doable given what he's done this season. So he's just been an absolute revelation, hasn't he? And I think the one maybe disappointment is the fact that Leeds have had to wait so long for this. Imagine this was last season. And he was doing similar things. How different might last year have panned out and looked? Who knows? But without a doubt, he's a fantastic player on that left edge, isn't he? And I think as well, what I do want to mention is that we're starting to see other aspects of his game a bit more now. One of the big criticisms of him, certainly in the early parts of this season, were yes, he is a fantastic try scorer, but the other parts of his game perhaps aren't there as much. There's still the odd error that creeps in. I mean, that was still the case in the south of France as well last week. He spills that ball early on, doesn't he? Yeah. Some of his yardage runs weren't perhaps as good as they could have been. Certainly not as good as the other outside backs in the Leeds squad, as Ash Handley, Ryan Hall, etc. And some of his defensive work was perhaps a bit lacking. Famously at the start of the season, Brad Arthur, after it might have been his first game here, Micah Sevo this season, said he's still unfit. Which I know is not the case now.
Against York.
Yes, it was the York game. Of course, it was. I know that's not the case now, and that's been mentioned again. I think of late, and he's starting to dip under his weight targets. I think by all accounts this year, which they don't want him to do. But those other parts of his game, those yardage carries, those defensive intricacies as well, and knowing when to dive out, when to stay back and trust your inside man, are starting to improve, I think, and are really starting to come to the fore and look better. And as an all-round winger, Micah Sevo is still improving this year, and I think that's what is quite remarkable, given that all we've been talking about all season is his try-scoring exploits, which are obviously fantastic for Leeds, but the other parts of his game that were perhaps lacking somewhat are now also starting to get to the same level as well, which is, again, only good for Leeds.
I think he's starting to brush off that injury, truly. I think we knew it would be a longer-term process for him, but this is the sort of area that, granted, give him another few games, from potentially maybe Toulouse or St Helens away, that's where we need to be seeing peak Micah Sevo, isn't it, really? But just a final note, stats-wise, again, we know we love stats here, is that these two are the top 2 line breakers in the competition all season. Micah obviously leading, Gary behind. I don't think it's a surprise that with the quick ruck speeds and the game being a lot quicker, this has been a season for the wingers, whether it's been Sevo for the Rhinos, it's been Gary for Cass, it's been Eckersley for Wigan. It's been a real season, hasn't it, for the outside backs, getting metres up the field and showing just what great tries we can score in this competition.
I think wingers' stock generally is rising.
Yeah.
Because, we're seeing again this year just how crucial they are to the game. No longer are wingers just those players that touch the ball down off the back of a move to the left or the right hand side, and they put it down in the corner. That's not the role of the modern day winger. It is about so much more, like you say, the yardage carries, having that explosive speed to get your team on the front foot early on in a set, which some of the names you mentioned there, Sevo, Eckersley at Wigan is fantastic at it. Gary again can put himself in that ballpark that they do so well at both ends of the field for their sides, and that is the role of the modern day winger. And like I say, we're seeing it with some of those players, and Sevo and Gary are absolutely part of that.
And I'd even go further and say I think it's as well the centres as well, because again, we've touched about Ash Handley coming up against some really great competition this year. Outside backs in general having a fantastic season. Just to round us off here, Jack, Cass have won 4 out of 9 home games this season. They've not made it a fortress, but they've actually made the OneBore Stadium. There goes jungle. OneBore Stadium, at least a tough place to go. It's a different kind of stadium compared to, say, your bigger stadiums like Headingley, going to Wigan, going to even Huddersfield. It's a ground that gets on top of you. It's a crowd that gets on top of you. What do you expect the Rhinos to look like? Bear in mind that they like playing expansive. There's not quite that opportunity at Cass, is there?
There's not, but I still think some of Leeds' better rugby this season has come through the middle, and some of those forwards now.
And then forward pack, by the way, just before you finish that point, that isn't going to have Keenan Palacio. He's out. He's been ruled out for, Brad said 6 weeks, but a prolonged period, let's say that.
I was going to mention exactly that. A forward pack that doesn't have Keenan Palacio, and one that you'd imagine that'll present again the opportunity for Presley Cassell. who dropped into the side last week when Palace was ruled out with that foot injury. So I do think some of Leeds' best work this season has come through that middle. That forward pack are almost the unsung heroes of this Leeds team. Yes, it's your Severs and your Connors and your Millers and your Crofts that grab the headlines and are scoring the hat-tricks and scoring the tries, but that forward pack has just been so good. It's been a level above. It's probably been the best pack in the league, or certainly one of. Just in terms of that consistency and what they bring week in, week out, the aggression, the go forward, the leaders that are in there, Ledsky, Holroyd, Jenkins, have all stepped up, I think, this season, without a doubt. I know we spoke a lot about Mikolaj Ledsky last week and just how good he's been, but they've all played their part. Yes, Palace is out for the next few weeks, which I think will be a test. It's probably the first real injury Leeds have had this season, or real injury to a regular first team. I mean, you look at Max Simpson, obviously, who's still in his recovery, and Alfie Edgell as well, who's been out for a while. But in terms of players who would be, first picks in the 17, it's probably the first time Leeds have had a prolonged period without a player. Ryan Hall's obviously still out as well for a shorter period of time. But
Lockie Miller had those 3 games as well.
Yeah,
but that's not an injury, that was a ban.
Yeah, it's the first time that Leeds have probably had to deal with this all season. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. I think most people have probably got confidence in the trio of Ledsky, Jenkins and Holroyd, plus Cassell off the bench as well, to more than do the job. As we've said before on Matchday Live, Brad Arthur likes to sort of shuffle that middle as well. Jared O'Connor will drop in there at times and plays loose forward. Callum Watkins, Cameron Smith are all options in that middle unit as well. So, I don't think it'll be... I say not much of a miss. Palace has been sensational this year, but I think just because of how much Leeds back themselves and how much that pack backs itself, I don't think the level will drop. Yes, he will be a player that's missed because of the impact that he brings and how consistent he has been this year, but I think overall they will still stay at a level, and they will, the players that are already there and have played just about every game this season will drag Presley Cassell up to that same level. There is a standard there now that has to be met. And I think that is the ethos through the team. Regardless of who drops out, who comes in, this is where they need to be at. And I don't think that will change, even for Cassell, who will come in to that side, or did come into that side at Conlon.
And we will see just how Brad Arthur opts to use his forward pack, who he goes for when team news is announced in a moment. Just before we round off here on Matchday Live, a quick way, if you've not got your ticket, I believe there might be just a few, but today was going to be a massive crowd expected down at the OneBore Jungle. If you can get a late ticket, grab it. If not, we are on Sky Sports Plus, one of the bonus streams this week, under Rugby League, so you can watch us on there, which also means for you Super League Plus viewers, we are on there too. Action coming to you from just before 3 o'clock for a 3 o'clock kickoff. If you're out and about, though, wanting to listen into the action, you're travelling, you're going elsewhere, Jack, BBC Radio Leeds, always our great friends, always got the Rhinos covered.
Yeah, all frequencies on BBC Radio Leeds this weekend and online as well on BBC Sounds. Matt Shaw and Barry Eaton are your commentary team there.
Fantastic. There you go. You cannot miss any of the tries going in, because no doubt there will be a few. There always is when the Rhinos go to the OneBore Jungle. Or stay in touch with us at OneBore Stadium. I've done it again. Or keep in touch with us across our socials, at LEEDS RHINOS, across X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, for all the post-match comments, all the try replays. You can not miss a thing by subscribing. Well, my thanks as always to Jack for his analysis and insight into the Tigers. Always appreciated. I've been Dan Hawkhead, and team news is coming next.